Spellbook of Judgment, a game-defining card that was released nearly 10 years ago in the Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy booster pack. Its effect reads, during the end phase of the turn this card was activated, add Spellbook spell cards from your deck to your hand, except Spellbook of Judgment, up to the number of spell cards activated after this card's resolution. Then, you can special summon from your deck one spellcaster type monster whose level is less than or equal to the number of cards added to your hand by this effect. You can only activate one Spellbook of Judgment per turn. This card has spent the last 9 years on the ban list, and for what a lot of people will probably tell you is a really good reason. This card's ability to supply what feels like endless resources, alongside being able to special summon powerful floodgates such as Jowgen the Spiritualist, allowed this deck to compete with the then Tier 0 Dragon Rulers. If you were part of the competitive scene back then and you weren't playing Dragon Rulers, you were playing Spellbooks, and it was almost entirely because of Spellbook of Judgment. But in today's Yu-Gi-Oh!, it kinda sucks. What's going on, guys? Super Insane 18 here, and today I am bringing you a new series that for now I will be calling BANLIST Bummer. I'm not really sure if that's going to be the name of this moving forward. I don't know if I'm even going to make any more videos like this, but it is going to be a discussion style video, which I don't really do a lot of, so I'm not sure if you guys like it. If you do, go ahead and smash the like button. That'll let me know that you guys enjoy it and I can make more videos like this. We're going to go ahead and rush through the deck profile because the deck profile is not the point of this video. I will give some explanations where needed, but other than that, it's mostly going to be discussing why I have the opinions that I have about this deck, so let's go ahead and jump on in. Alright, so like I said, this isn't the point of the video, so let's go ahead and just get through this as fast as we can. We have 3 copies of Magician of Prophecy. This is just the search for the deck, obviously you need it. We have 2 copies of Jowgen. You have to play 2 because this is the power play of the deck. If you play 1 and you open it, then your Spellbook of Judgment doesn't really do much other than add you more resources. We have 3 copies of Ecclesia. This is just for consistency because we are trying to abuse the Dogmatic engine to protect our Jowgen. Then we have the 1 copy of Fleur de Lis. I'm not really happy with this because if you summon the Jowgen, you can't use the floor, but I feel like it's necessary for the hands where you don't open the Judgment. Then we have 1 copy of Spellbook of Eternity, 1 copy of Spellbook of Judgment now that it is freshly off the ban list, 1 copy of Spellbook of Power, and the last one is Spellbook of Wisdom. Spellbook of Wisdom is a way to protect the Jowgen as well because the strategy for this deck is somewhat of a protect the castle type strategy. You just want to cheat out the Jowgen as fast as you can and keep it on board at all costs. So this will make it unaffected by cards like, let's say, Forbidden Droplet or Evenly, or, you know, or not evenly, but you guys know what I mean. Then we have 2 copies of Fate. This is another card just to protect the Jowgen. I don't think you should play this at 3 because honestly I've been bricking on both anyway, so not really a card you want to see more than one of, other than searching it. Then we have 2 copies of Spellbook of Master, 2 copies of Spellbook of Starhall. This is something that not a lot of people are going to agree with, but with your win condition being Jowgen, you don't really have a lot of high attack monsters, so not only do you need the attack boost from Starhall, but it's also just a free activation because that is the biggest problem that I've had with this deck, is seeing the Judgment and not having enough spells to activate to make Judgment worth it. So this is just a free activation, so obviously, I mean, it is what it is. We have 3 copies of Knowledge. This deck needs as much consistency as it can get. 3 copies of Secrets, again, because we need that consistency, and that is it for the actual spellbooks. Moving on to the rest of the spells, we have 1 copy of Called by the Grave, we have 1 copy of Mystic Mind, because this deck has absolutely no play going second, 1 copy of Terraforming, not just for the Mystic Mind, but a field spell that we play more of in the later parts of this profile, and then 1 copy of Upstart Goblin. It is a free activation as well as consistency, so it adds to that ability to really abuse the Judgment. Then we have 3 copies of Nadir's Servant. This is not only a free activation, also consistency, because it not only gets you your Dogmatica engine going, but it also gets you a draw if you send something like Garura, or if it's a turn 2, it can get you a pop by sending something like Patis. We have 3 copies of Secret Village of the Spellcaster. This kind of plays into that protect the castle type strategy. If you end on this with a Jowgen, then your opponent cannot activate spells, which is really good. It turns off cards like Dark Ruler and Droplet. And that's it for the spells. We have 2 copies of Dogmatica Punishment, again just to protect the Jowgen, which also goes with our 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. If you can end on Jowgen Judgment, they normal summon you Judgment it. That pretty much ends their turn. Yeah, that's the main. Let's show you guys the extra. Now, this extra is mostly utility. There is nothing that you're really going to be making since your main play is to sit on Jowgen, but there are a couple things you make. Most of it's for the Dogmatica engine, but let's show you guys what it is. We have our 2 copies of Natis. This is just to be able to pop problem cards. If they are, for example, let's say playing Fluwanderies, Jowgen doesn't really stop it, so Dogmatic Punishment can send the Tis to pop 2 cards and then they lose their tributes. Then we have 2 copies of Garura. This is for consistency. You can send it off of either Punishment or Nadir and just draw an extra card, which is very helpful. 1 copy of Titaniclad. This is for the hands where you know you're not going to be able to make the Jowgen. You can use the Ecclesia to summon out or to rather search the Dogmatic Punishment, and the Titaniclad in the end phase will search you a Fleur de Lis. We have Mudragon of the Swamp and Starving Venom. These are super poly targets for the side deck, again, just because the deck really doesn't have any plays going second. We have Wind Pegasus to send off of your Dogmatica engine, along with Totally Awesome to send off your Dogmatica engine. This is mostly to recur your Magician of Prophecy, since it is a water. The only link that we typically make, which is going to be the Artemis. The reason you make this is you just normal summon your Magician of Prophecy, link it into this, then your Dogmatica engine's live because you have an extra deck monster. We are playing Crowley, which honestly almost never gets made, but it's consistency. If you can make it, you get to add. We have a couple of Charmers, the Light and the Water, which are the main attributes that we play. These are just kind of ways to link climb into Selene and access code as well. And that is it for the deck profile. Let's go ahead and tell you guys my opinions on it. Alright guys, so as I said in the intro, this is a deck that is almost 10 years old at this point, and 9 of those years Judgment was on the ban list, and based on what I've seen, Judgment could have come back a lot sooner. Now, when this deck came out back in 2013, I was just starting my competitive journey, so I was definitely very much a scrub or a bad player at this point. So everything that I'm going to be saying from here on out is based on the research that I have done, as well as the stories that I have heard from people that were actively in the competitive scene at that time. But this is a deck that was considered to be potentially tier 0, as it was the only rival for something like Dragon Rulers. And if you don't know what Dragon Rulers are, I mean, most of them are still banned to this day, and it was a very threatening deck that nothing else could contend with until this deck came out, which, I mean, technically this deck is older than Dragon Ruler, but the Judgment wasn't. Judgment came out in the same set as all of the Dragon Rulers. So, I mean, this deck is something that was very, very threatening, but the game has changed immensely in the last 10 years. Let's look at where we were in 2013. XYZs were only out for maybe a year or 2 maximum. We didn't have pendulums, we didn't have link monsters. Like, the game then versus the game now, it's essentially an entirely different game, and the way that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has progressed as a game is different than most. Instead of going through a set rotation like other card games, Magic and Pokemon, we have the ban list, which is meant to kind of get rid of problematic cards. But the problem with that is that in order to make decks that can compete with or even be better than the previous decks, you end up having to power creep them, and the power creep in Yu-Gi-Oh! Has just gone through the roof. Like, I mean, if you watch any sort of gameplay from 10 years ago versus now, games 10 years ago would last 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 turns. Games today are usually over after the first turn. Player 1 sets up an unbreakable board, player 2 tries to break it and fails, congratulations, player 1 gets the game, or vice versa. There are a couple of grind games here and there, but more often than not it doesn't happen, and unfortunately this is a deck that is built to grind. The point of Spellbook of Judgment is to recur your resources for your next turn, as well as set up a Jowgen, and back then Jowgen was threatening. 1300 defense wasn't really easily run over. If you were able to run it over, you had cards like Fate to banish or Book of Moon, the normal summon, so it was really easy to protect, but these days it isn't. There are so many cards, again, that I've already mentioned: Forbidden Droplet, Dark Ruler, things that you can just play to out the Jowgen, so doing a protect the castle type strategy isn't viable anymore. And since that's not really viable, Judgment kind of loses its playability. Because yeah, you're getting resources for your next turn, but you're probably not getting a next turn in today's format, which is why this deck is just horrendous in my opinion. I went into this really happy that Judgment was back. It was a deck that I've always wanted to play but never could, and honestly last night at tournament I just fell flat on my face. Now, I'm not the best player around. I do consider myself above average, but I know that there are a lot of players who are better than me, and yesterday was just a hilarious fail. No disrespects to my opponents, they were relatively new to the game, but I lost to a guy playing literally like Umi. Like, there were no cards that weren't from the Legendary Duelist Mako pack or whatever it's called, and I mean, I shouldn't be losing to that. My opponent didn't really know what cards did, he didn't even know what his own cards did, and I still ended up losing just because the deck is pretty much unplayable. Like, I don't really know what else to say. If you guys agree or disagree, I would love to hear it down below. Maybe my build sucks and there's just something better that I'm not sure about, or maybe I'm too stuck in the old way that the deck was meant to be played. But, I mean, that's just how I feel about it. I feel like Judgment could come back to 3 and nobody would bat an eye. This is a unfortunate bummer of the ban list because I know it's a card that a lot of players, especially the older ones that were actively competitive during that time, were very happy to see come back. So I'm hopeful that somebody who is better at the game than myself can prove me wrong and show me how strong Spellbooks can be. But at the moment, this is a deck that I would say do not consider playing. It's really not that good, especially from a competitive level. Now, if you are a casual player and you don't care about topping events, definitely go ahead and give it a try if it is something that you like. But for me, I am a very competitive person, and this is a deck that I do not see myself revisiting in the future. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this type of discussion video. I'm not really sure how it's going to look after editing. Like I said, I don't really do much of these, so if you enjoyed it, make sure to like the video so that I know you guys want more of these in the future. But thank you guys so much for watching. You know the deal. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, like, comment, share with your friends, and maybe consider supporting me on Patreon. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.